Hi there. Big breaking news. It was just announced that HBO's parent company, Warner Brothers Discovery, is going to officially split into two companies. An ongoing process which will be finalized in mid-2026, so about a year from now. But in case anyone is panicking, this is a good thing, and we've been anticipating and hoping for this for months now. Now, in the lead up to the big spring earnings report for Warner Discovery last month, I made a series of State of the Industry videos breaking down in detail what's going on over at Warner Discovery. Please check those out. They're much longer. They have a lot of detailed charts in them giving division by division breakdowns. I am rushing this out as an audio-only podcast for breaking news. The short version is that cable networks are dying, and they're dying fast, bleeding money from the company as a whole, and they're dragging the rest of us down with them. This reached a point where their flagship streaming series, more than one, suddenly got drastic episode cuts and budget reductions. This isn't something you can hide. That this really hammered House of the Dragon Season 2 when it was cut from 10 episodes to 8 at the last minute before they had time to rewrite it before the strike. Now keep in mind that when they made those cuts was back when they started filming, start of 2023. Different world then, because that was before their relatively new, less than 4 years old streaming division was turning a profit. Since then, in part because of shows like House of the Dragon, Penguin, all these big streaming shows, the streaming division not only hit profitability by the end of 2023, across calendar year 2024, it saw a 6-fold profit increase at a time when cable is dying. So, why is your successful streaming division with rapid growth being punished for the failures of the cable division? The very cable division it was invented to replace initially. Why, if the entire point was no one's watching TNT and TBS anymore, let's make a streamer with our cable HBO and we'll make House of the Dragon to be the new thing. House of the Dragon is suffering for the poor performance of comedies on TNT. Think about that. We are being punished for their failures. So we wanted them to cut out the cable division. Well, as you'll see in my main video, there are 4 major divisions within Warner Discovery. All of their linear cable networks are one division. TNT, TBS, Cartoon Network, CNN. HBO, however, in case you're confused and new to this, HBO was never a cable channel in that sense. We're talking about ad-supported cable with commercials. HBO is an ad-free subscription premium TV service. Sort of a proto-version of streaming, so for years, within their internal divisions, that counts as part of the streaming division. Because, think about it, it's based on a subscription model, not an ad model. Though they do have ads for the streamer, but in theory you don't need to. That the combined division for HBO Max, the streaming platform, and HBO, the cable channel, which is still like a third of their viewership, that's called the direct-to-consumer division, or DTC. DTC is separate from linear cable networks. Then you have the studios division, which is the Warner movies and things like that. Now, technically, the 4th division is part of studios, the video game division. Warner is the only one of the 7 major streaming platforms that still has their own in-house video game division. Like Disney doesn't handle Star Wars video games, they sell it out. But I guess because it's a similar release model to, movies take years to make, then you put them out. Video games has so far been considered part of the movie division studios. I get into that more in the main video, you don't need to know it for this. Whatever the case, when you look at the charts, yes, there were video game flops recently, but they've already taken steps to fix that. That the head of their video game division since 2012 just got pressured to retire. They're bringing in new people. They're making new plans. I've talked about this in other videos. That, okay, they're turning that around too, because, video games are hit or miss, as opposed to this is an industry-wide trend, the death of cable. It's not something that's going away. And you can see that, like, video games had a good year 2 years ago, then they had a really bad year, versus cable is consistently dying for 5 years, and they know it. So we've been pleading for 2 or 3 years now, please, for God's sake, I mean, overtly since a year ago, dump your cable channels. They are holding back the rest of your company. The future is streaming, and even HBO, the cable channel, I think will just eventually... 5 years ago, 2/3 of their viewership was... When Game of Thrones ended, 2/3 of the viewership was on HBO, the cable channel. Now, House of the Dragon Season 1, 1/3 of the viewership was on the HBO cable channel, and it's declining. That's just where media is going. Talk about this more in the charts. Here's the short version with rounded numbers. For full calendar year of 2024, raw revenue for all of Warner Discovery across all 4 divisions was roughly $40 billion, of which about $20 billion was from cable networks, and the rest roughly split evenly between studios and direct-to-consumer, about 10 each. But that's just raw revenue. What matters more is net profit. But when you look at net profit, Warner Discovery as a whole was $9 billion for 2024. And out of that $9 billion, $8 billion was from the cable networks. So at first you're looking at this going, well, these are crazy. Why would you think to get rid of your cable networks is absurd? Well, that's just on paper, but there's 2 reasons it's actually obvious how bad cable was doing. First of those 2 is growth rates. That what you're looking at is just a snapshot of, oh, it's 8 out of 9 billion. It used to be so much higher. And the rate of decline is staggering. That considering they didn't have a streaming division for a long time. That, well, first by raw revenue, since the streaming boom began in 2019, cable divisions have been consistently declining 5% every year. But what matters more is net profit, in which the cable division has been declining 10% or more every year the past 5 years, and it's not getting better. Versus the streaming division, which increased by a factor of 6 in the past year, that looking at the growth rates, it's obvious cable is dying, and it is dying fast, and they have to do something to get rid of it. Second of 2 reasons, though, is even these are fake inflated numbers, masking how bad it really is, and it already looks bad. 10% loss every year. Oh, these are the inflated numbers. What happened was they faked their way along until the cable apocalypse of 2023. Remember that? That happened right after House of the Dragon Season 2. They had a terrible earnings call. But it wasn't just Warner, it was everyone who has cable assets, from Disney to Comcast, which owns NBC Universal and their cable channels. That you have to remember that the studios like Warner or Disney, they don't get money directly from people getting cable subscriptions. They get money from third-party distributor companies. They have contracts with distributors like DirecTV or Altice. You might have remembered back that summer where Disney shut off its DirecTV contract for a while until they got a better deal. That basically what they did was, for about 4 years since the streaming boom began, they extorted the distributors into just keep paying pre-boom 2018 contract levels. Even though from 2019 through 2023, profits fell to 1/3 of what they were for the distributors. They had 1/3 of the money they used to, because everyone was cord cutting going to streaming. And despite a down to 1/3 loss, they said, keep paying us those same numbers. And even then it was still declining. Well, what happened was, because of the writer's strike in 2023, that paused content for about half a year. So they weren't making money from these contracts anyway, and the distributors just finally said, this was the last straw. Enough is enough. We're putting our feet down. You can't keep asking us to pay 2018 contract levels. The money just isn't there. That they didn't care. They just said to the distributors, pay me the same. I don't care how you make up the difference. Usually what they did was just by tripling the cost on the 1/3 of people left who still had cable subscriptions. But that just became unsustainable. That they couldn't keep sustaining the lie the fraud of this, that they had to acknowledge we're just not getting that kind of money. That cable used to be what most of their money came from. It isn't anymore. So even these numbers you're seeing of that, well, half of their raw revenue is from cable, that is going to disappear within, on the scale of 2 or 3 years, because the inflated numbers aren't happening anymore, and that's going into effect now. That they're not just getting these giant contracts extorting the distributors. So the cable apocalypse of 23 was the wake-up call that not only is cable dying, it died yesterday, and we've been just dressing up its corpse a la Weekend at Bernie's, pretending it wasn't already dead. So they need to dump their cable assets. They dumped them last year, really. So since then, they've been doing everything right, though, that Warner has openly been taking steps. I was reporting on them as they happened, if you follow my channel. If you haven't been, they've been taking steps towards a split. Everyone has who owns cable stuff. Comcast was actually the first. That Comcast, with NBC Universal, split off all of their cable assets into, they called it SpinCo at first, then they called it Versant. And they said, this is just a dumping ground for the cable assets. We're going to gut it and sell off the IP for whatever we can get. Because for them, for Warner, investors were hesitant to buy their stock, because you're not just buying stock in the successful HBO Max with House of the Dragon and Penguin on it. Why would I want to buy stock where half of that is technically going to dying cable channels? So it's, their stock price is half of what it was in 2022 when Zaslav took over. And the hope is this will boost investor confidence again. It should. Now, what they already did was they reorganized themselves in an administrative level. That they said, instead of having these 4 divisions, well, 3 divisions, where it's studios, cable, and streaming, they said, well, the core company is studios and streaming. Administratively, there'll be a cable networks thing over there on the side. It wasn't run by the same people anymore for about half a year. Now they're just publicly acknowledging that. This is the same thing Comcast did, where they made an administrative split, then half a year later, officially it's a different company now. Now, we weren't surprised by this. In fact, we were hoping it would happen faster, because that means fixing the HBO stuff for the Westeros franchise, as far as that's concerned. One specific detail of the split that just came out, which did slightly surprise me, we thought they were just splitting off the cable channels. But it turns out that the Discovery Plus streamer is going along with the cable channels. So what happened was David Zaslav started out as the CEO of Discovery Plus. And he was good at it. He made it profitable across the 2010s, that he, through ruthless contracts and stuff and nickel and diming, that it was the 8th largest streamer, which isn't much. But their reality shows, they cost nothing to make. So in terms of net profit, it was actually a pretty profitable streamer, and still is, at a time when all these old cable networks, like the old Time Warner, were dying. They already had to, they were so deeply in the red, in such a debt spiral, that Time Warner already got bought out by AT&T starting 2016, finalized 2018. They tried for 4 years, it didn't really work, so then AT&T was desperate to get out, so Zaslav bought it from them in early 2022 to create Warner Brothers Discovery. So he was the former head of Discovery, but now he's traded it off. That the new way this split is going to work is the core company with the movie studio plus video games plus the direct-to-consumer division, which is the streaming platform plus HBO. That will now be headed by David Zaslav. No big change there, from the past 2 years anyway. The second company they're splitting off, which includes the cable channels and Discovery Plus streamer, will be headed by Gunnar Weidenfels. He's German, so his name is Gunnar Weidenfels. He has been Zaslav's right-hand man for many years as chief financial officer. And he worked for the McKinsey Group. If you've heard of them from Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, did a great episode on the McKinsey Group, that if you've heard of them, it's no surprise that Weidenfels is a corporate raider, that they are infamous for being corporate raiders who swoop in, fire a bunch of people, make a bunch of cuts, gut the company by selling off its IP for whatever they can get for it. to technically make a profit out of a dying company. And they pass it off as, oh no, we're making it more efficient. It's, you're selling off and gutting a dying company, Gordon Gekko style. So, for Weidenfels, a man trained by the McKinsey Group working for them, it's no surprise that he's this corporate raider who, under normal circumstances, that would make him a heartless monster with ice in his veins, visited by 3 ghosts at Christmas. But these are not normal circumstances when it comes to wrapping up the dying and obsolete cable networks that should already have been shut down years ago because they were dragging the rest of us down with them. Well, Weidenfels' qualities as a corporate raider are actually quite a boon. But it doesn't matter anymore. We're free now. It doesn't affect us. What we were worried about were the movie and streaming franchises and the video games, anything that could affect the Westeros franchise. Nothing with that separate Discovery company now, that's with Weidenfels, affects the Westeros franchise. Cable channels and Discovery Plus. Now, I assume they're going to have to do a name change or something, that maybe this will still be called Warner, and his thing and Weidenfels' thing will be called Discovery. We'll have to see what they do with name-wise. The streaming platform will still be called HBO Max, because it's, because they still have all of HBO within the one thing. Losing the linear cable networks doesn't affect that. The company itself might change. You won't see that on your TV when you're logging in, though. But finally dropping the dead weight of the cable channels. Everyone is doing this now. Comcast is already doing it. Disney isn't far behind. This is a good thing. I don't care what happens. The bigger thing is the inherited debt. Like I was talking about, that Time Warner was just throwing money around. It's kind of why Game of Thrones happened. Why are these idiots in charge? People saying there was just this new Gilded Age in the early 2010s where they were throwing money at everything. That Richard Plepler really didn't know how to run HBO. Jeff Books, in turn, didn't know how to run Time Warner as a cohesive unit. And they ran the company into the ground. It was the most indebted company in the world towards the end of Game of Thrones' run. $50 million in debt, at one point $55 million in debt. AT&T bought them, tried to pay off some of the debt, realized it wouldn't work. They're at about $55 million in debt by the time of the Warner Discovery merger under Zaslav. To his credit, through severe cuts, admittedly, some of which needed to be cut. I just think he went too far. But there was pretty bad mismanagement there. Between 2022 and now, in the past 3 years, he cut down their debt from $55 million to $35 million. Which is pretty good in a short time span. But what they announced is they said most of the remaining $35 million debt will go along with the cable networks to Weidenfels' Discovery Company. We're free now. They said, well, there'll be some, like a non-insignificant amount, like, I don't know, $5 billion or something. That's fine. We're making enough money to pay that off now. Versus, this is the end of a long saga since when I started my channel. Before that, since 2016, where they said, Time Warner isn't sustainable anymore. We're looking for buyers, maybe AT&T. Because when you're just, the amount of money they wasted on failed projects, or, oh no, Game of Thrones, we can just afford to, they hid from us just how much they lost on production because they were mismanaged. But on the, even Game of Thrones as one show couldn't affect just how badly they were running their corporation. This is the end of a more than a decade-long, 12-year saga of Time Warner got run into the ground by idiots in this new Gilded Age of parachute studio executives, golden parachute studio executives. We are finally free of the debt. Or at least normal amount. $5 billion, that's fine, you can handle that. Long-term loans that don't even need to be paid off for 10 years. Tell me in the comments, please, back me up here to the new people. All I've been talking about since before House of the Dragon began, since late Game of Thrones, was the crippling debt crisis and how it affects the shows they make. And it's over. This weight has been lifted off of us. So I don't care what happens to that debt. It's Weidenfels' problem. We should care about it as much as we care about the debt crisis at Paramount. It doesn't matter anymore. The Westeros franchise is free of the debt. Why did Weidenfels get something like $30 billion in debt with dying cable channels? He's going to gut it and sell what little IP they have left, and he's convinced he can do this at a profit. More power to him. I don't care. It doesn't affect us anymore. Well, the one thing I'm kind of worried about is the one cable channel I still watch is Adult Swim. Rick and Morty is a hit show, right? It's on right now, but mostly I'm watching it off of the HBO Max app anyway. I just like Adult Swim. It was a big part of my college years, and I like watching the title cards, the bumps, and the Toonami stuff. It's part of the fan community, but I'm not sure what's going to happen to Adult Swim. They did say very recently, we are going to have content sharing agreements. So stuff on the cable channels like Rick and Morty will still be streaming on HBO Max. Near term, possibly for a while. They've already pretty much killed off Cartoon Network, the day-side children's stuff, which was beloved by everyone and by, college people too, like Adventure Time or Steven Universe or Regular Show. They've removed all of their cartoon content, even Looney Tunes, that they're shutting down. They're getting out of cartoons because they realized Disney and other platforms like Netflix beat us at children's animation. We can't compete. They are, of course, still going to have some adult animation, as you would. Normally, HBO's had adult animation like the Spawn cartoons. They've had adult animation before. And they will continue to have Rick and Morty, for example, on HBO as part of HBO Max. What's interesting is just yesterday, at the Annecy International Animation Festival in France, there was this huge 25th anniversary of Cartoon Network panel where they had everyone. They had the creator of Adventure Time, the creator of Regular Show, Rebecca Sugar from Steven Universe, and Genndy Tartakovsky. And all of them were announcing new projects, like there's going to be a Primal Season 3 from Tartakovsky on Adult Swim. And these revivals of all these Adult Swim classics, but meant for adults who grew up with it, that age cohort, that Fiona and Cake, the Adventure Time sequel spinoff, will continue at HBO Max. That they announced there's going to be a Regular Show continuation on Adult Swim, which will not Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, which will in turn be for HBO Max. There's going to be a new spinoff after 5 years, a new spinoff of Steven Universe, though that they said was moving to Amazon Prime. Which is good, they have good animation there, like Invincible, Hazbin Hotel, they'll fit in fine there, but the franchises we loved aren't going to die. They have to shift to streaming platforms, might not even be the Warner one. And it'll be an awkward transition, but it's not the end of the world, is my point. So I would mourn if Adult Swim shut down, even though it's been 20 years, but my hope is they just, what other shows are doing, make a live stream channel, like how there's live YouTube channels where part of the fun of Adult Swim is they had fun commercials and title cards and things in between. Do that as part of a streaming channel, 24-hour streaming channel within the HBO Max app. So you can drop in, watch what other people are choosing to watch live jokes during the commercials, remark on it on social media or whatever. Again, part of the awkward transition from cable to streaming. How do you deal with when a channel dies like that? I hope they have an Adult Swim. We'll transition to the YouTube channel for Adult Swim and for Make a Live channel. But that's just sentiment for me, Adult Swim. In terms of most of you guys, this doesn't matter for the Westeros franchise anymore. We are free, our problems are fixed. Most of them, from the money perspective, that debt that has been crippling us and there was always over our shoulder is gone. It was even there from 2019 through 2022 when House of the Dragon started, but the idea was there is such a streaming boom now, we will go even further into debt to build up a streamer, because if we don't do it now, we won't exist as a company in 2 years. They needed to make HBO Max in 2020. So that put them into even more debt. Everything competing to be the next Game of Thrones, to be the flagship for each streaming platform, needed to happen in that 3-year gap. But now that the streaming boom is over, and it is linked that the streaming boom ended, and not only is streaming slowing down, the cable companies are going, you do realize people are watching streaming, but it isn't profitable yet, so we're losing money too. We're at that awkward midpoint where people have cut the cord on cable, but before streaming has reached profitability, like Disney just reached profitability. HBO Max just reached profitability, both of them in the last 2 years. So that is an awkward transition, but overall things will work out. So this is for all the new people. If you're scared by this headline, we've been following this for months. I already said it was coming, and I was hoping and waiting for it in anticipation. Now, what is going to happen in the immediate future? Now that this is what Zaslav wanted, he won, he got rid of the debt, he got the best parts. Well, when he wins, we win in this case, because it means more money for the Westeros franchise. He might start going on, he mentioned vaguely, we're going to be doing more mergers and acquisitions now. Which they should. They have the money to do so now because they just got rid of all of that debt. He'll be looking to spend money. This affects both. He might try to buy Paramount Plus. He's been trying to for years. He's been having meetings on it. He might try a renewed push to buy Paramount Plus. We'll see what happens with that. But mergers and acquisitions overlaps with internationalization because when you move into another country, technically you merger with the distributor or something. So like when they launched HBO Max in France this past summer, it's like, well, we're doing a corporate merger with the OCS streaming company in order to get the contract. Point is, when you have more money to buy more distribution contracts or directly move into a company. So I'm pausing for emphasis, dropping their cable debt will only increase the speed at which they have their big international launch in the remaining big markets of Europe that I've been talking about with Dunk and Egg. All this is interrelated. I said I think they postponed Dunk and Egg to spring because they've already said we are planning this big European launch to the parts of Europe we're not already in, which is everywhere covered by the Sky Atlantic streaming family. I always called the Sky Atlantic Zone. Someone pointed out to me, well, Sky Germany and Sky UK are two separate companies. They're part of the Sky family. You know what I mean? The Sky Atlantic Zone is the British Isles, Germany, Italy, Austria, a couple of others. That is a big region. I saw a figure that right now in Europe, HBO Max is at like 60% of capacity relative to what they could be with those big markets. This not only couldn't hurt, but can only help, that this will speed along that process. That in case you're worried someone's going to have red tape of, oh, we don't have the money to buy out Sky. They have the money now. The debt is gone. And even within the earnings call reports about this split up, they said word for word, this will speed up expansion because it speeds up mergers and acquisitions. We'll see what they do with that, both with buying out smaller companies and with its speeding international growth. But the biggest thing for me is it's not just that, well, they're going to finish the split a year from now. It's already pretty much a done deal. They're just waiting for the ink to dry, as they say. The perception of shrugging off debt will spur investor confidence, leading to very rapid growth. I've got my eye on what is their stock price doing. That surprisingly, one of the investment companies actually downgraded their credit rating because how dare you split off all of your debt into some cable company? Doesn't matter for us because that didn't affect their stock price. That investors actually, it seems the major investor companies wanted them to do this split. So even though they technically got their credit rating lowered by one rung, no one cares. If anything, splitting like this has boosted investor confidence. So the warning of we're downgrading their credit rating was meaningless in their eyes. So we're hoping this will lead to drastic investment boom, stock price boom, more cash flow, which in turn means that Zaslav will loosen the purse strings and go on a spending spree, greenlighting projects, giving episode count extensions to the budgets of existing shows. That in a very real way, this isn't just my idle speculation, this frees them up, being free of this debt, which they have now announced they're getting rid of by splitting off the cable networks, will free up money that they could at least potentially, depending on Zaslav, but a sane person would then pump back into extended episode counts for their core franchises. I mean, when you've got like The Last of Us Season 2 had a 7-episode season, well, that's because they split the game in half, and that has its own issues. But when you're seeing these shortened episode counts all over the place, where it was a terrible thing they did The House of the Dragon, now we're hoping they get, like I've said, maybe a 14-episode Season 4 split into 2 halves of 7, so it's functionally Seasons 4 and 5, but there might be shorter seasons. I'd be happy with that as long as we get back the 6 episodes we lost from these cuts. And that's just House of the Dragon in terms of I want them to boost the episode count again. I mean, they're already making Season 3, it won't affect that, but for Season 4, for entirely new shows, on the other hand, I hope this leads to a greenlighting spree, that officially greenlighting Dunk and Egg for Seasons 2 and 3. They've already functionally said that they're waiting for that, but outright greenlighting it, not just planning to. Or, I don't know, that they've openly have writers attached to non-greenlit pitches for Targaryen Conquest in Nymeria. That Mattson Tomlin has said he is a prominent writer, he's doing Targaryen Conquest, but it's not greenlit. Or we pretty much suspect that they're already in discussions for a Robert's Rebellion movie due 2028, but it hasn't been greenlit. So, I mean, these near-term future projects which are already under discussion, a Robert's Rebellion movie, a Targaryen Conquest 5 to 7 seasons show, which would go through the time of Maegor and stuff, splitting the company like this will probably lead to more greenlighting, it'll lead to more cash flow, and we don't even have to wait for it to be finalized in mid-2026, about a year from now. The fact that it's already going through, tomorrow Zaslav could go on a spending spree. In fact, I'll leave you on this. I'm looking ahead to, he's going to, not this weekend, the weekend after that, on the 23rd, he's going to the big media mogul conference that they hold every year, the big Sun Valley, Idaho retreat, where like all the Jeff Bezos, David Zaslav, Bob Iger, big industry moguls all meet and give a lot of big public announcements about major projects. So maybe he's going to announce a spending spree at that, or if not that, a month later. So this is the payoff to months of state of the industry videos I was making, that not only is there nothing to fear with this or with delaying Dunk and Egg a little for the European launch because it's actually better for them, they really turned things around relative to where they were in August of 2024. Really, I thought it was dying, that they turned it around, and things should be getting better from here on out, and I expect good news.